life, God done changed. He done changed. Take a look at my past, how you gon' blame? How you gon' blame me? Take a look at my past, how you gon' wait. Can't even look back, gotta keep my face forward. Mama crying to the Lord, she the one praying for it. Looking back on my life, God done changed. He done changed me. Looking back on my life, boy, you can't judge me. I've been washed up in the blood. I done seen some things that people tried to sweep under the rug. Tried to come and steal my blessings, but they had to bring them back. They done took away my brother, cause he had to move them back. It's okay, I ain't told, I ain't snitch, I ain't fold. I just switched up the mode, got it cracking in my area code. Back on Richard Road, where the streets was hot, that boy was cold. I was throwing out his name back when they was throwing bows. Mama prayed so much, cause she wanna keep me up from that corner store.
Welcome to the January 26th, 15th, 2026 first Madison County Tea Party. Honestly, I'm impressed. I'm thankful to God that we have all these beautiful people here tonight. The last couple of days, I kept thinking, there ain't gonna be anybody there. It's gonna be cold, it'll be nuts with it, rain, sleet, and hail is gonna happen. So thank you all for coming out. I'd like to start off first with Jerry Alexander giving us a prayer, please.
Our Heavenly Father, we are thankful that we live in a country that is free. And we're thankful that those of us that call ourselves Christians, that we at least are not seeing any persecution like in other countries. We're thankful, Lord, that we have a republic, that we are represented by not only people at the national level, but people at the state level, and even the county and city governments. And it's a blessing to be able to know some of these individuals and be able to express our opinions, and they listen. And we appreciate their being with us tonight, and we pray that you will help them to continue to govern our state, that from the governor's speech last night, we feel like we can say that we're in good hands, that you are certainly making a difference in the leadership that we have at the state level. We pray, Lord, that you will bless this evening, help us that are participants and in this audience to be respectful and learn what good things are being done in our state. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Adam?
Yep.
Start.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the veterans please rise again so we can thank anybody that's been in the military? Appreciate that. One other thing, would like for anybody that is running for office that's already signed up, would you please stand at this moment? Okay. All right. Start with you. Please give us your name and what you're running for, please.
Sure. My name is Michael Garinger. I'm running for District 1 Commissioner. Just filed today. Born and raised in Madison County, out near Pleasant Valley Church. Grew up around farmers like Gene Best and George Walters. And, old Mr. Lacey out there, went to Pendleton, graduated with IU and earned some degrees in the medical field. Did that for about 30 years or so. And I've come back to my county here, my home. And
welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Ma'am?
Kimberly Stewart, I'm running for Madison County Sheriff.
Thank you.
I'm Phil Gift. I'm running for Indiana House District 35. Born and raised Fairmount. Got my nursing degree at Ball State. Did 17 plus years at the VA. And couldn't run for public office because of the Hatch Act, but I'm retired now and I'm running.
Mike Shively, Anderson Township trustee.
Thank you very much. Okay. Tonight we have, if they all can come, 5 speakers. And before that, we've got one gentleman, unless you have, David, have you got the information out to people you really want to have, Eric? Have you already talked to them? You don't need to now?
I need to talk to them because I'd like to let the public know too. I told them I'd fill them in on this meeting, but I gave them a heads up because I don't like to answer.
Okay, 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Hello, everybody. My name is David Sargent. I'm Fall Creek 1 Republican Precinct Committeeman. Something happened in the past couple of years that didn't sit quite right with me. I had a bunch of my constituents in Fall Creek 1 come to the Madison County Commissioners meeting. There was an ordinance that was being discussed that they wanted to talk about that they weren't happy with. And I said, well, first of all, you better go into the Commissioner's office and get permission to speak because you do not have a right to speak at these meetings, nor is there an agenda for you to speak on that. They were not happy with that at all. Thankfully, the county commissioners allowed them to speak, and I only know of one instance where someone was not allowed to speak, and I think that was an oversight rather than a deliberate function. But it got me to thinking, something's not right here. According to the United States Constitution and the state constitution, the public has the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And with the text, history, and tradition of the rulings on the Constitution, that meant that at a public meeting, the public had a right to speak to the elected officials on what was bothering them. And that's a problem. The public access counselor in the state of Indiana basically said that the public has no right at public meetings to speak. That's against the federal and the state constitution. That needs to change. Because very simply, from all the research, that's not how it's ever worked in this country. So that is the reason why this is the first time our legislators have heard from me on this, because I wanted to get all my ducks in a row and make sure I didn't have both foot in my mouth. But with everything I've researched with law, with history and everything, that has been the tradition and the cornerstone of our American government. People have the right, especially at the local level, because generally an ordinance can be passed in 2 weeks. The county commissioners meet twice a month, so that before the people even knew it, they couldn't even get a petition.
What's your request?
So my request is of the legislators to look into this issue, get with the Attorney General's office and the public access counselor, and get this conflict with the U.S. Constitution and the state constitution worked out, and restore the Hoosiers in Indiana the right to speak at public meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got 3 out of the 5 that have got here, and we found out there's an issue that he's coming a little bit later. So we'd like to start off with Kyle Pierce. He needs to, he's going to change the agenda just a little. He's going to speak and ask for questions. But then after he's going to speak before we have a full round of questions. So go ahead. Everybody, Kyle Pierce.
Thank you, and so first off, Elizabeth Rowray, who's in District 35, she let me know her son's been in the hospital all day. Things should be fine, but she missed session, so she's also going to have to miss this evening. And Lawyer got some reason with the old location, so she's on her way, so she'll be here. So we have a little update on the legislative kind of some of the things I'm working on, and then kind of I'll speak more broadly. I think three of us, speaking more broadly what's going on in session, will kind of probably duplicate, so I'll be a little bit short on that end. Unfortunately, I do have to leave somewhat early. I am going to take questions. I apologize. I'm also going to give out my cell phone. I also promise to be back here during session. And then also every other Thursday, I do 30 to 45 minutes of open call radio on WHBU. You can call and ask your questions. So always feel free to reach out during session. This afternoon, 4:30 to 5, I was on radio answering questions that folks have. So a little bit of, for those who don't know me, and I know most of the crowd, so I serve as the Vice Chair of the Financial Institutions Committee, on the Elections Committee, and then on the Environmental Affairs Committee. A lot of my focus this year has been on ensuring protections for users or for folks in the financial institution space, making sure that the United States continues to be a leader when it comes to the U.S. dollar and economics around the world, then also making sure that our investments are protected, but when you're doing your retirements, 401ks, mutual funds, or whatever it may be. So I'll start with that one. All three of those bills, I just kind of highlighted real quickly, passed the Financial Institutions Committee this Tuesday in bipartisan fashion. So the first one, House Bill 1273. Do most folks have your retirement or 401k, mutual funds, right? So you invest in those funds, and that whole concept is you hope that over time they continue to go up, right? And when you decide to retire, you have that money for you. Those that which you invest with, either it's a 401k or Schwab or wherever it may be, they have a duty to you to try to get the best returns possible in a safe manner, and they need to be good stewards to you. Well, at some point, your investments or your group's investments can invest enough money that you actually start to have votes for companies, right? Either you might have enough where you actually, your 401k might have a seat on the board, or they might just have shareholder votes. And they have a duty to work and vote into the best manner to get you good financial returns. However, what's occurred sometimes is a thing called proxy advisors. It's been an issue for about 20 years. The Obama administration highlighted it in 2014. The President Trump's administration highlighted it in 2018. During the Biden administration, you didn't see much work on it, but there was an executive order just last month by the president on this issue. And so what they're doing is they're massive, massive companies that say, hey, your 401k or your mutual fund, you have these votes coming up on these 75 different boards in which you have votes for. How are you going to vote? And how you vote might impact how your returns do, right? If a company goes under, guess what? That's not great for your financial future. Mm-hmm. So what they'll do is these investment firms will hire these proxy advisors to say, how should I vote? We're trying to get money returns. We don't know how to attack Q3. We don't know what the CEO's compensation package should be. So these proxy advisors are hired to basically to give informed information to your investments. What came out last year was oftentimes the two major companies that have 90% of the market, which is you're getting a monopoly territory, are not doing financial or value-added analysis into their decisions and giving them to these organizations. JP Morgan Chase just decided to stop using them because of the danger it is to their investments. Those investments are your investments. It might not have JP Morgan Chase investments, but they cover 90% of the market. So I guarantee you are impacted. Maybe a few aren't, but most are. So what my bill does is it says this. Those companies have to show the homework to those investment firms. If they say, hey, we should vote against company management, they have to show their homework. If they say we're doing it because of a value-based reason or a financial-based reason that we think that the company is going in a bad manner and we think they want A and we think B is better, okay. Or if they don't have that and they just think, we don't think they have a good, we just don't like their choice. We want you to oppose it. We don't really have a financial reason or value-added reason. You have to say you are not doing it for one of those two things. And then you have to show again your homework. What's happened is some of these companies have just straight up cookie-cutter responses for some issues that could actually be hurting your financial investments in the long term. And again, having two companies manage that is a much larger problem when you could have it have a cooling effect on your investment. So that's number one. It's an issue that a lot of people haven't heard about, but it's becoming more of an issue across the country. Like I said, the president had an executive order on the issue last month. Beyond that, some of you might have heard of the thing called the Genius Act. It is a thing called payment stablecoins. Is anyone familiar with payment stablecoins or stablecoins in general? So you might not be familiar with it today, but over the next 5 to 10 years, this coin or these financial tools will very likely be a massive, not I would say savior, but a helper in ensuring that the U.S. dollar stays the world's currency. For those who don't know, the U.S. dollar is the world's currency. We know that China and Russia and the BRICS countries are rather open that they would not like that not to be the case. That would, talk about financial investments, that would greatly hurt you and your pocketbooks in a great way. It would hurt the fact in terms of the U.S. Strength and its economy, especially when engaging other countries. So the payment stablecoin is saying you have this digital currency that's backed by the U.S. dollar, which gives it clarity in terms of if you're using these stable coins both here and abroad. And so with that, there is both federal regulations, state regulations through this bill, and I'm leading us through the state process. Lastly, a thing called, our last bill, House Bill 1042, is on cryptocurrency broadly. A lot of people are concerned about it being used. A lot of people are concerned about its volatility. And so what my bill does is this. One, it ensures if you like to use cryptocurrency, you can. Two, it also ensures practicality where if you have people who are retirees who want to invest in cryptocurrency, that there's protections and safeguards. Things like crypto ETFs can be utilized to protect, to safely invest in those tools. So again, it's really wonky stuff, but as a vice chair of financial institutions, I have the honor to kind of get into those wonky things. Beyond that, I have two other bills. One, has anyone gone to a show in the Paramount or any other small theater, right? One of the worst things can happen, and it happens more than you would like to kind of think about, is people buy a ticket, they show up, and they realize they never bought the correct ticket, not because of their own fault, but because they're scammers. And so what happens is the large places like Ruoff and Gamebridge and all them, they have really good protections on their tickets and ensure and kind of basically block out those who are trying to deceive purchasers. The mid-sized ones do not, right? They are trying to keep the lights on, have performances, and so what happens is a show goes live, you go online to try to buy a ticket, and you'll see there's 7 different companies you can buy that ticket from. I will promise or guarantee at least 5, 6, if not all of them, are not really holding the ticket. What they're going to do is have you buy it, then they're going to try to go to the Paramount or wherever it is, and basically cross their fingers and hope that the ticket's available. And if it's not available, well, stinks to stink, you don't got a ticket, right? And while that's bad for consumers, it's bad for local business, right? Because when you're there with your ticket, thinking you got a ticket, and you don't, most people are going to be furious with that local business saying, you failed me, which it's not their fault when they have people trying to scam Hoosiers. And so what my bill does is say is this. If you are reselling tickets, you have a duty to the person you sold it to. The fact is, if that show's canceled, you have to pay them back. If you ended up doing this where you sold a ticket you don't have, you're liable for it. So guess what? If you tried to sell that ticket, went to the vendor and said, hey, I want to buy this ticket for this person, and they don't have it, guess what? You have to pay them back. Sadly today, a lot of people get around these loopholes of not paying these people back. It hurts, one, the consumer, and then two, it hurts the companies, the vendors, because the vendors think I'm doing the right thing, putting on a show, and I don't know what all these people online are doing. So it's going to crack down on those who are really trying to target folks in our local communities who are just trying to go to shows and things like that. And then the last bill, it's kind of a quirky bill. I call it the most boring bill of all session. It's a technical corrections bill. Before 2015, we used to have one extra day of session. This is only my third year, so I wasn't there, but the General Assembly would have an extra day. And the entire day was just on technical corrections. Spelling errors, missed comma, one bill references another bill, and it should have said, section 35, but it says section 36, and there is no 36, so it's obviously 35, things like that. That cost Hoosier taxpayers 6 figures to make that day happen because of all the staff, all the resources that go into that. Instead, we have this bill that I have, House Bill 1088, which is 21 corrections, and if you're like an English teacher or want everyone to be an English teacher, this is your favorite bill because it is literally going through the entire code, looking for the misspelled word. If the way how you spell internet has changed over the year, there used to be a hyphen, now there's no hyphen or whatever, or interwebs, all that's changed, all technical corrections, and it's the most boring bill in the entire session. It's a bipartisan bill. I've never known someone to vote against it, but it's going to save you all hundreds of thousands of dollars. But when people ask, so what's in this bill? I say it's the English teacher's best rating. So that's a little bit of what I'm working on. I know I went long on my end, so I won't talk about the broader session. I'll let Ethan and Mike go through that. And when I'm done, I'll make sure to call Lori to make sure she's not lost. That being said, I have to take a few questions. I do unfortunately have to go early. I will give out my cell phone. So if those who are taking notes, I'll give out my cell phone. It'll take 1 moment. So it's 317-443-1791. I'll do it one more time. 317-443-1791. Do I live in your district, or do you live in the area where I serve? If you live in the city, I'll be interested in the city limits. you're in my district. If you're in Union Township, which is basically Chesterfield, you're in my district. If you're in Markleville, or if you're in Adams Township, you're in my district. And like right now, we're in my district. If you go about 3 minutes south, you're starting to get out, and then you go into Ethan's district. So, yeah. With that, happy to take a few questions, and sorry for taking up a lot of time for just me. Questions?
On the bill for tickets, is that, what's the advantage of passing a law on that? I mean, isn't that fraud that in the first place? I mean, isn't that already illegal?
So yes, so not on the, hey, I have a ticket and I'm gonna go to the vendor and buy it for you. That is not fraud. And so what they're saying is, well, hey, you bought a service and unfortunately the service failed you. I'm sorry about you. And that's obviously ridiculous. And what they do is they put in, hey, if we can't buy it, you don't have the purchase. But when you bought it, you have a receipt of I have the ticket. Now, some people might be savvy enough to realize, hey, I still don't have this ticket yet. But it is such a broad problem happening across the country that Maine passed this law earlier last year. They had a price cap. I don't have that in my bill, but it's becoming such an issue that Maine has a law. I think Tennessee is working on one right now, and a few other states. I was unaware of the issue until our local Paramount talked to me about it a couple months ago. I was completely unaware of it. Wow. So, any other questions? Well, thank you so much. I greatly apologize for having to leave a little bit early. I promise to come back after session. Again, always feel free to give me a call. If you don't want to call, I'll get my email out and then I'll get out your guys' hair. My email is the letter H, number 36 @IGA .in.gov. H36 at IGA.in.gov. Thank you so much again. Apologies for having to leave a little bit earlier.
The two ladies, if they do come up, tell them to come on up here to the right away when they get a chance, speakers. The other thing I'd like to recognize, I know I see two gentlemen here in the back. Sheriff Beeman is here, and Trent now, assessor.
Ken.
Surveyor. Yeah, because I saw you and I was recognizing. Did you know what happened to Tom Shepard? I saw him the other day, and I apologize for stopping. Tom Shepard must have had a heart attack because I saw him coming out of 32nd Street at their therapy place, a place like that, and he was walking.
Lori will be here in 5 minutes. Lori will be here in 5 minutes. I just told her.
Okay. Thank you. Anyway, would you please recognize John? Would you like to say something?
No.
Hi, John.
You're ready for sheriff
Hi,
again,
John.
right?
Yes.
Okay, we want to book you right now. Ken?
What are they here?
Say hello.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other elected officials?
Rick?
Hi, Rick. I thought I saw you. Rick Garner. Okay. Precinct committees, raise your hands. Okay, there's a lot of us with precinct permits. Okay, good. Okay, I was trying to do a stall a little bit because maybe the little ladies will come in, but it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. So, is it flip of a coin or is it maybe numbers?
No.
In first? Okay. Got it?
Ethan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ethan?
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Ethan Lawson, please.
Yep. Thanks for the opportunity to be back with you. This was posted in Pendleton when I first got involved with the group, and Pendleton is actually in my district. Was really glad to have you guys there. I hope maybe at some point we can work things out and have you back down there. But my wife Holly and I are here with you tonight, and I represent Fall Creek Township, the Pendleton area of Madison County, and then I also represent a lot of Hancock County where I live. We live near Greenfield. This district goes all the way down to New Palestine, a lot of rural farmland in between. I was elected just about a year ago. Went through my first legislative session last year. Passed 2 bills, one that dealt with local government accountability and being able to remove the county commissioner in the case of doing really bad things. There wasn't a mechanism to do that before. and also had another bill that came to me from a local highway engineer and made it a little bit more efficient for them to use the dollars they already have, which is better because they're not taking more dollars from us to do that. This session, I have 4 bills that I filed. I'm on the Veterans and Public Safety Committee, the Election Committee, and the Roads and Transportation Committee. And prior to being elected, I was a civilian at the Indiana National Guard, so I'm really passionate about working in that Veterans Affairs, public safety space. I'll just walk you through a couple of the bills that I'm working on this session. So I had a auto dealer bill that I'm working on that's designed to get rid of a lot of government bureaucracy and help speed that process up. If you've ever bought a vehicle before, you know there's a lot of paperwork in between you and the car. And if we can help with that even just a little bit, I'm working on that. Can't make promises about all the paperwork you have to sign, but try to make it easier for the dealer to do the things that they need to do in order to sell the car. Other bill that I have deals with homeowners associations. So if you're a fan of your homeowners association, that's great. My bill is just designed in future HOA contracts, making sure that they're not raising the fees without getting a quorum of members. Current state law allows them to raise the fees 10% every year without getting a quorum of their membership involved. And so I want to make sure we're talking about housing affordability, we're talking about costs, we're talking about property taxes. One of the things that factors into that cost, if you live in a homeowners association, is your homeowners association fees. And so I'm just saying you should get a quorum of members involved. If they vote that the service is worth the cost, that's great. This would impact future HOA fees because we're not allowed to go back and retroactively affect HOA fees. The other thing it does is with regard to child care, which we need a lot more of in the state. We don't have enough of that, and government won't be the entire solution there. We're trying to make sure that your homeowners association isn't the obstacle. So the other part of this bill, looking forward at homeowners associations, is making sure that they're not regulating home-based child care more strictly than the state of Indiana or your local government already does. If you have children in the home and you're doing it for a business, there's already a lot of state regulations you have to follow in order to do that. We're not changing all of those. I'm just trying to say, hey, your homeowners association shouldn't be getting in the way of having home-based child care, because that's a real need in our state, in a way that we can get government maybe a little bit more out of the way with regard to that. Got a public safety agency bill that does a lot of stuff to clean up code and make things more efficient between the Indiana Department of Homeland Security, Criminal Justice Institute, Department of Toxicology. Other thing it does with regards to child care is you've got child care facilities that are inspected by the Department of Homeland Security right now, and before they can renew their license with FSSA, they're required to have an inspection for the fire code. We're trying to make sure that they can renew that license and have the inspection, and that they don't necessarily have to happen at exactly the same time. They're still going to be inspected, but they'll be able to renew their license without government again being in the way of them doing that. I have another bill and I'm blanking on it at the moment. Local government, oh yeah, favorite topic. Local government transparency, accountability, building on that. Thank you, Molly. She's heard me talking a lot about this week. Things are moving really fast in the session. I didn't expect. I've got 3 bills that are up for final passage in the House on Tuesday, and another one I think that'll follow the following week. But the local government bill really does 4 things. Park boards, I don't know if you do this or not, are granted broad authority in state law currently, and they can eminent domain property. They can buy and sell land in Indiana and other states without getting a vote from an elected official to approve that. I don't know if this is a rampant problem everywhere, but it seems like a lot of power to put in unelected people's hands, right? So my bill would change that. Park boards can function like they do now, but if they feel the need to do eminent domain, which they'll still have to go through all of the legal steps there, or they want to buy or sell or do a large transaction that's a significant part of their budget, that's going to be a recommendation to the elected officials that appointed those unelected people in the first place, which will make it a matter of public record and public debate. And while I'm thinking about that, David, proud to represent you in the House. You said you live in Fall Creek 1. I represent Fall Creek Township, and I appreciate you sharing your concerns about public access and public meetings.
My constituents' concerns more than mine, but mine too.
Well, mine too then, right? Because I think public meetings are about the public and hosted for the public benefit. And I'm not familiar with all of the details of the situation that you outlined, but I do want to look into it because, you know, if you're a government official hosting a meeting, you're not hosting it for yourself. You know, it's a government of the people, right?
I'd like to speak to that.
Yeah, go for it.
I made a public access request, and before the holidays, there was a gentleman that would call, and you'd be able to talk to an attorney, and he'd give you some recommendations and things. And then after the holidays, it seems like they changed staff, or maybe they picked up another staff member, and I literally got a form letter with no explanation for what I did wrong in the denial, or what I had to do to better correct it. There wasn't really any kind of ability for me to improve in my attempt to get important information.
It's hard to find good help.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you ran into that.
So if you could nudge them a little bit, that'd be awesome.
Was that City of Anderson or the county?
City of Anderson, both places, everybody's very reluctant to share information. Everything goes through an attorney.
Sure.
And if you're facing, it's not a fair process because you're facing committees that are making decisions once and then twice, and it's happening in a month and then 2 weeks after. You don't get the information like a flood ordinance or something like that you need to
Sure.
hold the argument.
I'm a fan of putting things online. You know,
Yeah.
there's some things that you are going to have to go through an attorney for, you know, but I'm a fan of online transparency and having access to records online. We had a bill that went through our elections committee this year that requires campaign finance records at the local level to all be posted online by the clerk as those records come in. So if that bill passes, that would be a thing in every county in the state starting July 1st, and I hope it does. That needs to happen.
The pitfall that I saw was it's posted online, but then it went to this extremely large national database that is extremely big, and it's in a two-page format.
Yep.
All I'm looking is for Anderson City flood ordinance. It should be something that I could get within a week, I would think, is reasonable.
Well, maybe there's something else in my local government bill you'd like. I'll continue through that. We can follow up on if I can help you with your concern. Other part it deals with is if you have these unelected boards, I think the elected officials who appoint people to this board should have the ability to remove people from those positions if they need to, instead of having them serve a 4-year term. So we're going to keep it where they can appoint people, they serve a 4-year term, but if the elected officials feel that they need to vote to replace somebody on that board to better represent the community, or if somebody's sick, can't fulfill the duties of the job, the bill would allow our local elected officials to have that control over the boards they delegate power to. The other part of the bill deals with county administrators. That's kind of a technical change to help commissioners be able to do their work a little bit better. And then I'm trying to remember, there's a fourth part of the bill, but let me come back to that. Anyway, the goal is local government accountability, making it work more efficiently, making it work for the people. And I'm passionate about moving in that area, so if you've got ideas, bring them to me. And happy to answer questions, or maybe go to Mike and then answer questions, whatever.
Why don't you go ahead and take questions?
Sure. Yeah. Any questions on that or anything else? Yes.
So you mentioned childcare fees
Yes.
has been the desperate need for childcare in the
Yes.
state. However, the funding for childcare was just drastically cut.
Sure.
It's like over 32,000 children on the wait list.
Sure.
And over 200 providers closed.
Yep.
What do you feel your office can do to support local providers, or help move that list some?
Yep. And just out of curiosity, what's your relationship with childcare?
I'm director of a childcare program.
Okay. And you have a program here in
Here in
Anderson that you
Madison
run?
County, yeah.
Okay. So you run a business that helps people with childcare.
Right.
Yep. And the
We
funding.
have it's a center that can hold 114 children.
Yep. Medicaid in this budget than has ever been invested in Medicaid in Indiana's history. And we've been doing that every session, every budget for the last several budgets. The issue we're running into is the Medicaid piece of the budget pie chart is growing so quickly that we're going to have to choose to cut somewhere. So the choice is going to be, do we cut education? Do we cut roads? Do we cut public safety? Do we cut, what do we cut? If Medicaid continues to grow and become, I think it's now 25%, 30% of the budget.
Today during the appropriations committee hearing, they said they had, I believe, $9 million more than what they needed.
$9 million out of like a $10 billion Medicaid budget.
$9 million is $9 million when it comes to children and
It
making
is.
sure they're properly cared for in a safe learning environment.
I agree with that. It's tough. I don't think there's ever going to be enough funding to meet all
So
of
you
it.
don't feel that there's really anything that, you know, can be done to support programs?
I think Indiana's current budget invests more in Medicaid than we ever have before. I think there's a need that continues.
What? But if parents have childcare, they wouldn't need Medicaid because then they could go to work
Sure.
and provide their own.
Sure. And we passed a bill last session that attempted to get government out of the way and provide more access to childcare, whether it's through schools or through other avenues. I'm not saying that problem is totally solved. I've got a bill that attempts to take another small piece out of that this session, and it won't be the only effort in that area. The challenge is the money comes from taxpayers or we borrow it, and there's definitely a need there.
It's a $300 million, I don't remember the name of it, there's a fund
Sure.
that goes to FSSA
Sure.
that is available and has not been tapped into.
I'd be happy to kind of have a one-off conversation with you with more detail.
Yeah.
To be fair, I do that with everybody in my district who has issues with Medicaid. I've toured autism centers, I've toured child
I
care
have no
centers.
problem with Medicaid,
I've sat down and talked with people about individual concerns, and we've been able to help constituents and even some companies like yours that help children to deal with FSSA, and sometimes we're able to help deal with the bureaucracy too. On the issue of funding, I mean, everything is competing priorities. There's always a need, and we're going to continue to try to find the resources to meet that need in a way that, you know, acknowledges that, yeah, there's been some fraud in that area too, right? Any other questions?
Weigh in on, do you mind if it?
Please do.
Yeah, so for folks that may not be aware, basically what happened here is that during COVID, the federal government dumped a bunch of money into state and local government. And at that time, the Holcomb administration increased the payment rates that they pay to the child care businesses. And then we in the legislature raised the income, actually, I would say we lowered the qualifications. So prior to our 2023 budget bill, you could qualify for the child care vouchers with an income of 127% of the poverty level. And we raised that to 150% of the poverty level. So you could make a lot more money and still qualify for these vouchers. As you all know, the federal stimulus money wasn't going to last forever. Some of our local officials have probably dealt with that too. They had an influx of money. And so basically we were faced with a huge problem that was just unsustainable. So to give you some numbers, the number of child care vouchers in 2021 was 38,650. In 2022, it was 52,012. In 2023, it was 60,618. In 2024, 67,048. So you can see this growth. And as of last year, that was cut down to 47,000. So it's still much higher than it was 4 years ago. The Braun administration decided to lower the reimbursement rates, and that was an action done outside of what would have oversight from the House or the Senate. That was a governmental executive branch action. Then we also had to take some action too, and in our 2025 budget bill, we lowered the qualification down to 135% of the federal poverty level. So it's still higher than it was previously before that COVID money came in, but we had to make some adjustments there. And as Ethan said, Medicaid is growing at a rate that's going to start to require two things. Either we're going to have to cut other areas like education, or we're going to have to raise people's taxes. And I'm not in favor of doing either of those. And so we had to kind of restrain this growth a little bit, but it's still
So could they cut the
higher than-
budget for like senators' pay or the governor's pay by 67% the way they did ours?
No.
Yeah.
Our pay has not changed. The formula for calculating our pay has not changed.
If you look at our pay has
12
changed
years.
by 67, 64%.
Your
And there
reimbursement
are
rates,
Senate and
your
House
re-
bills that address this.
the executive branch determines the reimbursement rates. We have done our part to try to reduce the number of vouchers to something that's
So does that
affordable.
not show state legislators that there's a problem within our state that so many children need to rely on vouchers?
You know, there's a lot of people that pay my daughter pays for her own child care.
That's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
However, in this county,
Well,
at the time that we've been open, it's been 10 years, 11 years now.
Yeah.
At least 75% of our enrollment has always been through the voucher program. So regarding the county that you represent, that's great that your daughter can. I applaud anyone that can. That's phenomenal that she has not had to use that. However, every single one of us, our one life have been away from, depending solely on the system. So phenomenal, she can.
So
However,
would
most of your
you
constituents
favor a tax increase to solve your problem?
I would favor that others, you guys take that pay cut. Tell me how you make it work.
Do you
I mean,
think
there's $300 million sitting in a fund that could be distributed to the FSSA office to give to the CPF program.
We get paid $1 a week for a child. One child, $1 is $1 a week.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Are you on the committee for children's services?
Yes.
So
I
are you
realize
aware
that you guys
that children from birth through age 5 are in their most critical development time?
I realize that this is Ethan's time, so I apologize, but we. I would,
If you guys have questions,
Yeah.
you're going to have to step in and ask them.
Yeah, I would be happy to sit with all four of you after this is over and go into more detail.
Great.
But there are probably other questions and other concerns that others have, but I'd be happy to talk to all of you.
Thanks for bringing that up. It is important.
It is really a crisis.
Everybody says it is, but they're not following through on doing anything about it,
Exactly.
just like the governor did last night. It's all talk.
It's all government money, so it all comes out of everybody's pockets in this room. So it's a conversation for all of us. I appreciate you bringing it up.
Got a lady back there that's got a question.
I have two questions about the election committee.
And Ken with...
Are you ladies satisfied right now?
Okay.
I know you're not satisfied, but already did.
So there's legislation to eliminate the election of certain officers. Just wondering where you stand on that one, and also on the legislation that would move city and town election to presidential years.
So I'm not as familiar with the legislation that you're talking about to remove offices. I think there might be a couple of different bills. I haven't looked into that. I would have concerns with removing elected officials from the offices they're serving in general. I need to look into that more, to be fair. With regards to the legislation to move elections, there is a bill that just passed the elections committee. Go out there on the bill. I voted for the bill. It actually came out unanimously out of the Indiana House Elections Committee. choose to move their election to an even-numbered election year. Larger cities and towns already have this ability in the law. Smaller ones did not. And so this would standardize that so that any city or town in Indiana could choose by a vote of their own elected officials to move their election to a even-numbered year when there are already other elections on the ballot and when the clerk already has a process and where taxpayer dollars could be saved and where there's potentially a lot higher turnout in those elections and more people are participating. However, this is not a mandate that would affect, Anderson or Pendleton. It's a tool in the toolbox of those elected officials to decide if it's best for their community or not.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. David.
Ethan, thank you. I'd just like to clarify what Ken Deal-Bastide was asking.
Yes.
There is a bill before the legislature, a House enrolled bill, that would eliminate at least the surveyor, the coroner, the assessor, Ken, who else? Treasurer,
clerk.
and clerk. And I'm totally against that. I believe in checks and balances in the system. And with having those eliminated where the county executive would appoint those, that's not a good thing. The people ought to have the right to pick that, to have that check and balance system in there. So I'm totally against that bill. I would hope you both would consider voting against that for that reason. One of the reasons I look at it that way is in cities, the mayor usually has total control over the cities. If you've got a good mayor, you're in good shape. We know a lot of the big cities who don't have such a good mayor, and it's falling apart for them. So I like that checks and balances. At least, even if everybody agrees to it, at least there's a speed bump. So things don't go like the Titanic straight into an iceberg. So
I
thank
like
you.
to say the reason our country stayed free for 250 years is our founders made it really hard to get anything done. So I tend to be in that vein with you.
The bill they're referring to is HJR2.
Okay.
And my understanding it was defeated, but I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah.
It was proposed.
Do you know who authored that bill?
Yes, I do.
Okay, who was it?
Rowray.
Thank you.
I saw that.
Clarification.
Yeah.
Do you what's your name, perhaps?
I'm sorry?
What's your name?
My name's Mike Scheibling, Anderson Township trustee.
Yes.
I have a question. Do you have knowledge about House Bill 1315? And if you do, that was authored by Representative Schunkweiler in 29. It is about consolidating townships. How do you feel about that, and what is your stance on that?
I am looking through that bill and trying to figure out what townships exactly are impacted by it. My understanding is it would impact a large part of the townships in Indiana, probably less than half, but I have not been able to figure out yet which townships in my district are impacted by that. So that's a process that I'm going through, talking with the author, talking with other legislators. Streamlining government is important. Having elected officials is also important, so that's the balance that we need to strike. There was a point in time where people lived their entire life inside of a township. That is no longer the case. People live their lives well across township boundaries and county boundaries now. And so I think it's a case-by-case kind of thing. Some provide fire service, some don't. Some provide poorly, some don't. Some provide parks and other amenities, some don't. Some don't do a whole lot of anything, to be completely fair.
Right. Can I add something real quick, if I may?
You may.
There is 270 on the Senate side,
Okay.
which I support for consolidation.
Okay.
We do need to streamline a lot of those things.
Yep.
Anderson Township is the 21st largest out of 1,002 townships in Indiana.
Yep.
We service 55,000 people.
Yep.
And we see a lot of people every single day.
Yep.
And to basically dissolve that township and put it at the feet of the commissioners who don't do this every day,
Yep.
I don't know that, and no disrespect to anyone in those offices,
Sure.
they don't do this and they don't know how to do this.
Sure.
They would have to hire someone at a much higher pay rate than what I get paid to do this function. And I'm just really curious as to why a township like mine, who is very busy and does a lot of good in this community, would be on the chopping block.
I'd have to go into specifics with you on your
I'd love to.
township and the bill
Sure.
I am not prepared to do that right now.
I got you, yeah.
I serving on the public safety committee, I'm really concerned about fire service. I'm really concerned about what that impact is. I'm trying to understand that everywhere. I think that's the most essential service that most townships provide, given the fact that every township provides a little bit different services, and some, to your point, and the Indiana Township Association's point, don't provide a whole lot of value. We also talk about property taxes, streamlining local government, but keeping more dollars in people's pockets, right? And part of that conversation is how many layers of government do you want to have? Because you're paying for all of them. How much value are you getting out of all of them? And so I think rightly part of that conversation is, are we doing things in a way that keeps the taxpayer in mind? Because all that money, again, comes from all of us. So happy to be part of that conversation and continue it.
Thank you.
Adam?
Ethan, I want to talk to you, since you're on the committee that deals with this, a little bit about road funding.
Yeah.
A number of years ago, before you got to the General Assembly, the legislature passed a transportation funding bill that raised the gas tax rates, but also buried within the annals of that bill is the ability of the state government to petition the feds for imposing tolls on the interstates. There is conversation, and my understanding, a pending application to eventually impose tolls on I-70. And I want to know if you've had any discussions about that in the road funding committee, what your stance is on that, or what else you think needs to change with how roads are funded in the state of Indiana.
Yep, I appreciate that question. So I was elected last year, so I've been in office for about a year. I'm learning a lot about road funding. It is highly complex. So much of the money is federal, some of it's state. You know, if you drive on the roads, you wonder where all the money's going sometimes, right?
All the time.
Right. So that's part of the challenge. We had a road committee meeting right out of the gate during session and brought NDOT in to testify. And so they presented a lot of those facts, what the governor is trying to do with tolling, what the plan is, what they've been spending the money on. There were some questions that were raised during that committee meeting about a lot of the projects that NDOT has delayed over the past year and where that money has gone. And we were told by the agency that we would be provided that information. So I'm looking forward to getting a breakdown from NDOT of the 300 plus projects they've delayed in the past year, where that money has gone. And I feel like I really need the answer to that question before we talk about, do we need a bunch of revenue and where would that come from, right? Road construction costs have been impacted by inflation just like everything else. In fact, more. 40% increase year over year in construction materials. So there is going to have to be a long-term conversation about how do we fund that. I'm not convinced, tolling is the answer to that necessarily. Could be part of the answer, but we need the short-term answers on where's the money going, why are the projects being delayed, before we talk about more. And I'll continue to ask those questions. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to be the Karen in the room, but I kind of feel like I'm getting ready to.
Is your name Karen?
No, it's Nicole.
Okay.
Nicole Kapuscinski,
Yeah.
Combat Veteran, OIF 2008.
Thank you for serving.
Someone stole my absentee ballot while I was deployed.
When was this?
2008.
Okay.
I have all the documentation. I was going to ask Kyle some questions before he got and left, but you're here, so I'm just going to dump it out on you.
Sure.
Or just on the room, actually.
Sure.
So then it goes into, I got sued by my neighbor for a half acre during the pandemic. He tried to steal my property. And in that, I figured out that he committed election fraud, and I tried to file a complaint. Now, I probably have more complaints in from here to Timbuktu to the state of Indiana with Diego Morales, and everybody keeps telling me nobody has jurisdiction over this. They've told my statutes of limitations for some things. They've tried to silence me in almost every chamber that I've walked into when I go to talk about it. So, who has jurisdiction over the Madison County Election Board?
I would have to dig into the specifics of
Well,
your
Diego and them
situation.
say nobody. So this is where I start having problems because I serve this nation and I feel like when I bring someone facts, hard, cold facts, and they discount those facts and continue to allow things to happen. So it goes down to the accountability stuff that you're talking about.
Yep.
So basically,
Your
Madison
vote should
County,
count.
well, the Madison County Election Board decided that my complaint was ruled moot because Russ Willis was no longer the Republican chair.
Sure.
Well, that doesn't negate the fraud that took place, and I feel like because it was during a federal election year that somebody should be able to step in and investigate, and nobody has.
Sure.
Now I filed 3 more complaints. But the problem that I'm seeing is you guys work hard to write the bills and get everything passed, but there's nobody to enforce it. There's no, like, I have tried, I've been in person to the Statehouse. So then what's kind of the point if nobody's there to enforce the bills or have jurisdiction, then they kind of run amok. So you're looking at 91, 92 counties, and there's nobody overseeing the Madison County Election Board, and then they get to tell us that we can't speak. Like, that kind of gets me a little bit, because I should at least be allowed 3 minutes in a election board hearing just because I served. Not that I want special treatment, everybody, but I feel like, you know, if I was willing to take a bullet for people, then I should at least get 3 minutes to say something in those, you know, about a complaint. And then we have not had a proper functioning election complaint process since HAVA was enacted in 2002. Okay, so then I'm kind of challenging that. And so then we should have, like you said, website. Okay, we should have something on the website, and we should be able to follow those complaints from the time they get filed. You should be able to look online and see what the status is, and then how they answer it. So then I'm getting kind of like the runaround, like he was saying, with the APRA request. So we can't get people to answer our questions, and then, you know, at the end of the day, you see all these people committing all these crimes, and nobody's getting in trouble, and then they want to try to turn it into like I'm the problem, when I'm like.
Well,
So I didn't mean to dump that, but
No.
I'm still working on some election complaints that I'm upset about.
I would have to dig into a lot of details that I'm not familiar with.
Right,
about
so
all of that
I need to
works.
get your contact information, because I think you might be the one to be able to run that into, with all the guys at stake.
After the meeting, you'll be glad to.
Okay.
Thanks for serving and for sharing that with us. Your vote should count.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Lisa Summers, Alexandria.
Yeah.
We were talking about local government and the bill. Well, the blood plant in north of Alexandria, they're wanting to put in a CO2 pipeline. Okay, so if farmers that are in this line of pipeline, if they decide to lease the land to Poet or whomever, then the CO2 company can take eminent domain of these farmers' land. So how do you plan on stopping that? Because some of these farms have been in these families for hundreds of years. And it's not fair that they can just come in because they want to put this pipeline on that is very dangerous. Alexandria is a town of 5,500 people. If it decides to blow up, there goes the entire town. And it's just, I think it's Iowa or Wisconsin, I think, has stopped the CO2 pipeline to come through. So how will that stop the CO2 taking eminent domain of these farmers' land?
So I guess to help you understand, you said if the farmer chooses to lease their property to the developer, then the developer can eminent domain. I'm trying to follow.
They can take eminent domain of that property.
What if the
Because
farmer
they lease
just
it.
chooses not to lease their property?
Well, if it's eminent domain, they don't really have a choice. It's eminent domain, they can take the property. I mean, it's government.
I hate to say this
it's
a lot.
treated like any utility.
I'd have to look into that more. My bill is designed to make sure that eminent domain is not happening without elected officials being involved and publicly debating that process. My bill specifically is dealing with park boards, to be clear. Although generally I would agree with that sentiment. I think elected officials, if you're taking somebody's property for the public good, somebody who's elected by the people needs to be.
I mentioned this at Ridgeline, and
That is not in my district, and I'm not familiar with the
I'm
details.
just putting it out there.
But I believe in property rights, right? If land is being taken for the public good, it should be done by public officials in a public setting, and they should be accountable for it.
Pam, do you know what's running through those pipelines?
CO2, carbon monoxide.
Okay, I'm sorry if you said that anyhow. Okay. Thank you.
Since that question kind of goes in my district, could I take a stab at that one?
Okay.
I didn't know if we wanted to
Segue to anything you want to talk about too, if you'd like.
I just had a few things that I wanted to
I'm not
work on.
I'm not hurry, so if I
But we
have-
can answer questions together. if that's-
Well, we'll let Mike go ahead and speak for a few minutes and we'll open up for questions.
But could I address her, since it was already on the floor, her biggest issue?
Sure.
Okay.
So, the thing that you have to look at in these kind of cases, and let me say, first of all, I think the pumping CO2 into the ground is a silly thing to do. And I think the only way that works is if the government subsidizes it, because who else would pay for it? So I voted against any kind of bill that had to do with CO2 being pumped into the ground. Now, when you talk about individual landowners making deals, then you're talking about a zoning issue, and that would rightfully go to the commissioners if it's not inside of the city or town. And the reason that I think it's better for it to be solved at that level than at the Statehouse is that if you get me involved in the issue as your state senator, you're also getting 49 other state senators involved.
Wonderful.
That have probably never lived in your county. They might be from South Bend, Evansville, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, and you don't have any way to redress your grievances over their decisions. And so the way for this to get solved is at the local level on these kind of zoning issues.
To John Woodroy, and he would not have any conversation about
I understand, and he's up for re-election in 2 years, and you have the opportunity.
I might just
But-
vote against him.
But let's say that if Ethan and I tried to do something to prevent that kind of thing from happening and said, hey, local officials, we know you're the zoning guys, but we're gonna take this away from you and we're gonna solve it at the state level. We may be opposed to that kind of thing, but others may be for it.
Well,
And if they, that's the danger that you have. If the decision gets made at the state, it's going to be made by a lot of people that you don't have a chance to vote for. If it's made in the commissioner's office, you get a vote for all three of those. Whether you live in their district or not, you get a vote for all three. And so there have been attempts to try to force certain things on locals, and I voted against those down at the Statehouse. You know, there was an issue where they were going to take away local county commissioners and planning commissions' ability to regulate wind farms, and just going to tell all the counties that you have to do this. And it nearly passed. We defeated it by one vote. And so that's the danger of things happening at our level. But I agree with your stance on the issue. I wouldn't want it either. I think it's a silly thing. So
there's multiple counties that have the flood plans in them, and they're the driving force of the flood.
So, just real quickly, because I know several of you probably have more questions, I just wanted to talk a couple of things areas that I'm working on. As your state senator, my district is Madison County, and then the northeast corner of Hamilton County, the town of Atlanta, and half of Arcadia. The things in the committees that I sit on are the Tax and Fiscal Committee, the Elections Committee, Family and Children's Services Committee, and oh my goodness, I'm forgetting my last committee. That's awful. it'll come to me in a minute. The things that are important to me to try to get out of this session are basically additional property tax reduction, building on the success of last year in Senate Bill 1, election security. There's a push across the nation for ranked choice voting. I don't know if it has anybody unfamiliar with what ranked choice voting is. Okay, so basically today, if there are 5 candidates running for a certain office, you go in and you pick the one you want, and you get 1 vote. And ranked choice voting, instead of voting for your top candidate, you would rank the candidates of who's your first, second, third, fourth, and 5th choice. And it takes, I can give you an example. There was a recent election in Minnesota where a mayor's race where it took 16 days to determine who the winner was. And ballots get thrown out sometimes because people don't put all their choices in. And if you think about it, when you put your second, third, fourth choice, you're voting for your first choice candidate once, but you're voting against he or she several times. So it's a horrible system, and I'm going to be a little partisan here. Democrats love it, and Republicans tend to not like it. So we're putting through. We've already passed it out of the election committee, and it'll be before the full Senate, probably Monday or Tuesday, a ban on ranked choice voting in Indiana. We're also requiring election records. Currently, they're held for 22 months, which is the federal minimum, but our statute of limitations in Indiana is 5 years. So we're increasing this year. We've got a bill that will, and that'll be probably next week too, probably Tuesday, that will require local election records to be kept for 5 years. To give an example of something that we've uncovered, a female in Indiana registered to vote, goes and gets married, changes her name, registers to vote again, and in an election voted both under the maiden name and under the married name. But the records, by the time it was discovered, the records to support the case were already gone because of the 22-month requirement. And so I'm pretty excited about this bill requiring records to be kept a little longer. It should help in the prosecution of election fraud. We're also working on welfare reform and attempting to make sure that no illegal immigrant in Indiana is collecting any form of welfare benefits, that those should be for U.S. citizens and residents of Indiana. So we're looking to cut fraud, waste, and abuse. Any fraud, waste, and abuse that we can cut are additional dollars that are available for programs like you ladies were talking about, without raising taxes and without cutting expenses in other areas. So I'm proud to be a part of that effort. The last thing that mentioned is we're looking at reform of bail. So currently the Indiana Constitution guarantees if you're arrested and accused of a crime, it guarantees your right to bail unless it was for murder or treason. And we want to give judges a little more flexibility in keeping dangerous, violent criminals to not give them bail if the circumstances dictate. And the way the Constitution of Indiana is modified, we have the resolution passed through the legislature. We have an election, so at least some of the legislature turns over, and then we pass the same resolution a second time with the election in between. And the final step, which is my favorite, is that it goes before you, the voters. So if we can get this resolution out, this will be the second time that we've passed it, and it'll go before you, the voters. There'll be, in addition to all the candidates and the offices that you pick, there'll be a ballot question, and you will get to decide whether or not judges could deny bail for a situation other than murder or treason. So that's all I had, and I see there's a question, so.
Yeah, speaking of welfare, and you mentioned that illegal immigrants are getting welfare checks. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in order to receive a welfare check or anything like that, you would have to have a social security number and a bank account in order for that to be direct deposited, because all those checks are direct deposited now. So if an illegal immigrant doesn't have a social security number, how can you sit there and say that they're getting social security or getting welfare when there's no social security number in order for that to be direct deposited into their account?
Yeah, I don't know of specific examples of where they are, but as we look at our laws, they're not tight enough at this point to, and we're going to tighten them up to remove any potential. You want to say something?
I was just going to say, with regard to Social Security, DOJ found all kinds of Social Security fraud. They found Social Security numbers that theoretically were in the system as being issued to people who are 140 years old, and Social Security hasn't even been around that long. So like, there is potential for a lot of fraud in Social Security, let alone Medicaid. And a lot at stake when you have children and families depending on a program, but it's also a huge amount of our taxpayer dollars. So we do have to watch that very closely.
Yeah,
yes.
Ethan, there's constantly people taking over somebody's ID, and the reason they're stealing Social Security numbers is because they're selling them to illegal immigrants, so they can use somebody else's Social Security number, and they're paying.
There's unemployment fraud, the same thing.
Yeah, so it's out there, and to think that it's not in Indiana is certainly a big error, because it is happening. Yeah.
And currently, there is not a requirement to check the legal immigration status of someone applying, and this bill would require that.
Does FSSA use NGOs to help facilitate some of that disbursement?
I don't know whether they do or not. Do you, Ethan?
NGO is a pretty broad term, right?
Just non-governmental entities? So
Right.
do they use a private entity to help pass out some FSSA money?
Good question. I don't have the answer to that. I mean, there's a lot of non-governmental organizations involved in.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't know if this law is talking about having teeth or how that would work with these other entities.
Some households have another way that people get around this. They have a mix of legal and illegal immigrants in the household, and so there's no end to the creativity that people have when they try to perpetrate these kind of things on the taxpayer. So I think it's something we need to do, and every dollar that is paid to someone who is not entitled to it is a dollar that's not available for someone who is.
I have two, if I may. One is really short. What is your stance on Senate Bill 270?
That's Rick Niemeyer's Township bill that you were talking about earlier. Yeah, I'm going to have to give that further evaluation. This is the short session, and so in an odd numbered year, we go, for those of you who may not know, we go from the 1st of January through the end of April, and we do a 2-year budget. So in an even numbered year, since there's no need to do a budget, it's a very abbreviated session. and it'll probably be done by the end of February. So in the first half of session, Ethan's guys are only hearing House bills. We're only following Senate bills, and then after the halfway point, on the 1st February, we'll swap. And so I've been putting a lot of focus and attention on the bills in the Tax and Fiscal Committee and in the Elections Committee. And so I've not fully evaluated that one yet, but generally speaking, I don't like the process of township mergers with towns. So for instance, what they tried to do in Pendleton, wanted to gobble up Fall Creek Township. I spoke against that and led a fight against it. I don't like what Yorktown did with, that was in my district when I was first elected, and they did a township merger there, and I don't think it was beneficial for the taxpayers. So generally speaking, I don't like those things, but I know that Rick Niemeyer, the author of the bill, is a former township assessor, and I think also a trustee. So he comes from a township government background and he believes in it. So I'm going to give it a little closer look than I would otherwise. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Anytime you've got my phone number, let's talk about it. And I'd love to have your input before I have to make a vote on that sometime next week.
Absolutely, thank you. And the second part, if I
Yes.
could finish, you mentioned SB1 and property taxes and property tax relief. Do you see any changes in the near future? And I say that because our revenues are mostly from property taxes to offer poor relief in the township. We're going to lose about $25,000 to $30,000 in revenue this year. Next year, we're going to lose about $75,000 to $80,000, and in 2028, we're going to lose $235,000 in our revenue. It's very difficult to run an office when you lose a third of your budget.
Where did you get your numbers? Did you use like a Baker Tilly or an accounting firm?
We had CL Coonrod out of Minneapolis. They specialize in government budgets. They put all those numbers together for us. There's a little bit of fluctuation there, but not much. And I can share those numbers with you at some other time. That's not an immediate thing.
Let's get together, because we've done analysis with our fiscal people at the Senate for each unit of local government. And what we have found in many cases, I don't know if that would be the case with your accounting firm, but in many cases what we found is they make ultra-conservative projections that assume no growth in net assessed value, which we know the way property values are going, that's nearly impossible for that to happen. So let's compare our numbers, and let's see that we know exactly what the situation is before.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. I would just say on the property tax topic, it's also really important to the conversation that we've had, where every dollar is coming from a taxpayer, to realize that if we don't address the property tax crisis and the amount of money that it's increasingly taking out of people's pockets, we're going to have more people who need poor relief. So there are two sides to that problem.
Right.
We've got to work on together.
And that's understood. It's just a big number.
Yes.
You
You pick one. I don't want to pick. There's four hands out of it.
I took a lot of questions.
Okay.
Let me treat this one.
All right. Let's start with somebody who hasn't talked yet. How about?
I know that you were involved a little bit in all this water and well drilling in Madison County. Is there any kind of update that you can give us for that? And I did want to tell you real quick, when Governor Braun was here in June, I talked to him briefly, and he said, well, send me an email about it. Well, I sent him quite a long email asking him about it, and my main question at the end was, is this really what Indiana wants to allow? Basically, companies coming in, foreign companies coming in and abusing our resources and taking all of our resources and possibly depleting them. And I did not get any answer from him. But anyway, I wonder if you had any kind of update.
I was not aware of any foreign companies being involved in that. The way I understood the issue was that Pendleton, town of Pendleton, filed with the Utility Regulatory Commission to increase their territory to provide water service. And Anderson objected to that. And I'm trying to remember the term. It's similar to remonstrating, but basically they were fighting it, and other towns got involved, and so it was a big fight over water territory. If the IURC gives additional water territory, it's for housing and businesses going forward. They're not allowed to. So I'm on the well. I like my well water. I like to drink it right out of the garden hose. And so if the IURC grants additional water territory, the grantee is not able to come in and say, hey, you can't use your well anymore. If you've got a well, you get to continue to use it. The problem that Anderson is having is that their wells are old and not producing like they used to, and they need to drill new wells. If they were allowed to drill new wells out there by Meyer, just a little out of the city limit, they bought some property out there. If they caused any type of harm to someone else's well, like a resident, their well, then there's a process for that person to complain to the Department of Natural Resources, and it's pretty heavily favored towards the homeowner, that process. And so I have not seen whether or not the IURC has made a determination in that fight between Anderson and Pendleton. But I found it interesting that Pendleton wanted to come all the way out to Meyer to increase their water territory. That's what started the whole thing. And you can understand Anderson saying, wait a minute, that's right on our doorstep. So that's kind of what happened.
Want to step it up part of it? Is that like a step towards annexation though? Kind of a lead towards annexation when you give them water?
There's a different process for annexation.
Right. But if they already have water, is it almost guaranteed?
It doesn't make the annexation process a slam dunk. It does not.
No, but it would protect them from going to another district or another territory.
Well, they've already, Anderson provides electricity outside of their city limits as well. And so, we've passed out of the Senate. I'm pretty big on protecting rural property owners like myself who decide that, I want to live outside of a city or a town, so I've got one less layer of government on top of me. And if I need the police, I'll call my buddy John Beaman. Does a great job. And we've passed out of the Senate at least 2, maybe 3 times since I've been there, a change in the process to annexation that basically, rather than the city or town being able to put it in play and then you, the homeowners, having to remonstrate and fight against it, it would be a completely different process. That it would have to be a voluntary annexation by more than 50% of the property owners. And we haven't been able to get it through the House. It's not Ethan's fault. I don't think we've passed it since he's been there. But there's a committee chairman in the House that shoots it down every time and doesn't even give it a hearing. And so maybe we'll try again next year. I don't think it's on for this year, but that basically what Anderson is trying to do is maintain their water supply for the city that they have. And if you drill a well that's outside of the city limits and there's a neighborhood that goes in there they would like to be able to get some of their costs back by supplying the water to that new neighborhood, but it's not going to affect existing people. And one other protection you would have is that the Democrat-controlled city council and the Democrat mayor probably do not want to go out and annex Republican areas that surround Anderson, or they would probably flip Anderson to a Republican city. So that's your best protection of all.
So, Mike, which one did you mean? You mentioned that you're definitely watching like those tax bills that are coming through, and a pair of the bills that I've been watching are coming out of Holtman's committee in the Senate regarding the federal tax changes that were encompassed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. Some of the coverage is indicating that there are some tax cuts or tax benefits for Hoosiers that might not be incorporated in the Senate bill, including the no taxes on tips and overtime, or the deductions for car purchases. Do you support including those in the Senate's tax bill, or what are the odds that you think those will or won't be included?
Yeah, there's a bill next week that's addressing what is basically what you're calling is decoupling from the federal. When you look at your Indiana state income tax return, you start out with adjusted gross income from your federal return, and then there's certain things that you have to add back. And I think that's what you're talking about. And probably the biggest one that I've seen so far, I'll look for those others, but the biggest one that I've seen so far is the immediate expensing. So if you're a business and you buy $1 million worth of equipment and put in your plant, typically in the past you've been able to expense somewhere around $125,000 of that. I think it's indexed up over the years immediately, and the rest you have to depreciate over time. And the feds have went up to I think $2.5 million, and it would break the budget in Indiana to let you do that all in the first year. But you're going to get it in the subsequent years anyway. So that's one area where we're probably going to be different than the Big Beautiful Bill. But I'll check on those others. Jim.
Back on that, you mentioned the wages. Is it true that Indiana has to pass that in order for Hoosiers to get the benefits of the bill and the no taxes on overtime?
Anything that we would pass would just be related to the state income tax return, not to the federal. So whatever the feds have passed, you get on your federal tax return. When it comes to the Indiana tax return, like I was mentioning, you start out with basically the number on the bottom of your adjusted gross income is the bottom of the first page. And there have always been some things that are different that you have to add back. And I'm going to have to take a look at that.
There have just been some, I don't know, I don't know where I read it now, but there's been some while after that was passed that we don't benefit from that if the state doesn't pass
If you file your federal tax return, you're eligible for the federal relief that bill provides. There are state by state.
On no taxes on the tips and that's what I'm specifically talking about.
Yes, we don't have to do anything in Indiana to make an Indiana resident eligible for the federal.
That was my question.
Yes.
I heard that we had to pass that as a state.
But we can provide additional state benefits, but you get the full federal benefit when you buy it.
Yes.
All right, so like in relation to what I'm asking about this no taxes on tips and overtime issue, the feds can say we won't tax tips or overtime, but the state has to make the decision on whether they're going to apply the state taxes on the same thing.
That's right. Specifically on the state sales tax, right? Or on state income tax, yes, correct.
Yeah.
It's, the federal though, it's based on the minimum $7.95 an hour, if an employee makes $7.95 or $7.25 or whatever the minimum wage is, with their tips, they still have to pay tax based on the $7.25, the federal minimum wage. Even if they because that's the point where they start assessing no tax on tip instead of $7.25.
And that's in the federal.
Right.
Okay, so, Mr. Gaskill, you said that you live in rural Madison County. I live in Monroe Township, Alexandria, and Madison County is trying to push the Madison County Rural Utility District. Are you for or against that? Because sooner or later, it's going to be all of Madison County that they'll all have to be on one plan or one system.
Where I live, even though it's outside of a city or town, I am on a rural, on a regional waste district. It's Fall Creek Regional Waste District, and so I've got a sewer bill every month. They do a fabulous job. I've lived there 26 years, and my bill is somewhere around $44 or $45 a month, and when I first started it was somewhere around $32, so I give them kudos. They've done a fabulous job. But there's a lot more population down in that area that they serve, and my concern is, are there enough people in Monroe Township to make that work? And I haven't looked at it like the commissioners have, but to me, the easiest thing for the county to do would be to make a deal with Alexandria and get those 150, 170 households on Alexandria sewer. Something needs to be done because
Alexandria sewer can't handle it as it is, because they can't handle their own sewer.
Well, the mayor says he can handle it, but
they are in violation. But so with the RUD, if a home is not able to have a new septic tank or anything like that, they can also take eminent domain of the house if it's not possible. So how is that? Like some of these people that live in Phillips and Scott's Edition, they don't have the money. They can barely pay their bills as it is. So how is that fair? Trying to make them go onto a system that they don't have the money for to get a new septic system.
Well, I am not arguing for that or against that.
But you just said that you were for a Alexandria to get these 175, 200 homes.
I don't see how they're going to make it work, but I'm not a commissioner, and that's one of those local issues, and where your concerns need to be addressed or with.
But nobody addresses anything. Like they just pass the law.
Right.
So it's kind of pointless to go to
the
the
state legislature doesn't really have the authority to come in to all of these local issues.
But you can come out and look at it though.
I've been out there.
Okay.
And I've talked to one of the residents who is in a low-lying area, and basically, for those of you not in the area, these houses were built in the 40s. Their septic systems were okay at the time, but not really up to modern standards. And so, imagine if you're the people at the bottom of the hill that have a black water Old Faithful spraying up 20 feet high in your backyard. And so IDEM has come in and told the county, you're going to have to make a solution. And so they have to do something. They've been ordered by IDEM to do it. And there's unsanitary conditions. You can go and look, and raw sewage is being dumped into Pipe Creek. So something has to be done. And I would not if I lived there, I would not want the solution of the regional waste district. But it's not my call.
Okay.
question. One of the things that everybody worries about, like the senior citizens are worried about staying in their homes because of the increase in property taxes and then the increase on insurance because the property has been valued for more. The other issue is affordable housing for the kids. One of the things that I deal with living outside in the Pendleton area, I get calls constantly by probably corporations trying to buy up my property and then using it for rentals. Does that come to the attention of the state, or is it something that the state would be interested in looking at? I know President Trump has said something about, you know, big corporations buying up all these properties and then renting them out. That's not necessarily a great thing. Can I ask your opinions of this, and has the state looked at this?
I remember it was before I was there, but I was working at the National Guard at the time. There was a bill passed into law that restricted foreign adversaries acquiring farmland within so many acres of a military base. It covers most of the state. I mean, I don't support foreign adversaries owning anyway in Indiana.
Okay, I'm just talking about major corporations buying up all the housing and then using it for rentals.
Sure, that is a locally regulated issue.
Okay.
If the state comes in and tells private property owners or companies you can or cannot buy or sell land, your state government is too powerful.
Can you tax
Okay,
them?
that's fine.
Can't you tax them? Like, you know, they do, is it one residential?
Either
2,
way.
3%, whatever, can you tax them like 5%? You know, on a corporation that owns property?
It's theoretically possible to tax anybody at anything, I guess.
One thing about it going back to the Pendleton example that he brought up in his question, the biggest problem we have there is that Pendleton is one of the worst offenders in impact fees. And how many of you that have grandkids in the audience, okay? Would you like your kids and your grandkids to be able to, as they go out on their own, to live close to you, you know? We're driving up the cost of housing with ridiculous impact fees and regulations to where young people can't afford to buy a house. And Pendleton is one of the worst offenders of that. And if you think about it, if a new housing addition comes in and maybe the property tax assessment was on farmland before, now maybe it's 100 houses, those 100 new homeowners there are helping shoulder the load of your property tax. You know, think of it as a fraction. On the numerator is the amount that government is going to collect through property taxes. The denominator is the total value of all property in that taxing area. And so if we have additional homeowners come in, it should decrease your taxes if a new housing addition goes in, because you're sharing the same load with more people. So,
you mentioned housing affordability. I mean, 25% of the cost of a new home is government regulation. So we can do a lot in that space. We can do more in, I think, in the homeowners association space with giving homeowners more say in what their fees are versus the services that they're getting. There are things we can do to help get government out of the way of that part of the housing affordability problem. So.
I'd like to shift gears if possible before it gets too late in the game. My name's Lance Rinker. I live and work here in Madison County. I thank you both for being here, and thank all the elected officials and those with aspirations and attendance as well. So an issue that's been weighing on me for several months, as I've noticed this trend begin to rise in Madison County, Hancock County as well. Flock license plate reader cameras. I'm curious, first of all, who in the audience is even familiar with them? Really? Okay. Well, that's heartening. Yeah. Because anecdotally, as I ask, people I am close with or work with, there doesn't seem to be a lot of awareness in the community. There hasn't seemed to have been a real diligent public discourse on this topic. Not a lot of transparency, and I'm ashamed that I didn't speak up while Ken was still here with the Herald. But this is over the last 6 months to a year, in spite of all those, the lack of what I just mentioned, It's seemingly a unilateral rollout. Anderson, for instance, where we're here gathered tonight, is saturated with these cameras. But even smaller rural communities, we've listened to citizens from Alexandria, Middletown, Daleville, LaPel, Yorktown, I'm sure. I mean, any community that I can think of, the main thoroughfares in and out of town has these cameras now fixed, and they are tracking any motorist at all, lawful, unlawful alike. And so I'm perplexed, and honestly, I don't know exactly who I'm even addressing this to. If anyone has opinions, or if anyone smarter than I can explain some of this, because the concept of a town archiving, and this is, to my knowledge, a public-private partnership. It's a private company called Flock, which has very conveniently recently done a deal with Amazon with the Ring doorbell surveillance cameras. There's another surveillance company named Axon. They've all seemingly merged. So the fact that any motorist entering and exiting a town, like any of these surrounding rural towns, and basically any street in Anderson, I encourage you all to keep an eye out for the black or 10 to 12 foot small black poles, normally fixed with a solar panel atop the camera as a charging unit, I assume. But now they're also on light poles. They've very conveniently been stationed behind road signs and speed limit signs, kind of out of view, which is interesting to me as well. So I'm just curious if anyone has any thoughts about that. I noticed one in the parking lot of Community Hospital even, which seems like it would probably border on a HIPAA violation. Anyone entering and exiting a hospital is being tracked. And even the security, I don't know a lot about this private company. I know there have already been leaks that if criminals can get access to your habits, like where and when you're traveling, this affects the safety. I mean, I know it's counterintuitive because I imagine the argument for it would be around public safety. But I just have a lot of questions about it, and I'm curious if anyone in attendance tonight could offer any insight.
I've learned about this recently from talking to friends in law enforcement.
Right.
And I've heard several stories of how they've been able to use it to get some pretty bad people off the street. However, like you, as a law-abiding citizen, I don't want somebody tracking my movements when I'm, performing legal activities. But I don't know, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've heard several times lawyers say there's no expectation of privacy in public. But maybe it would be helpful. Sheriff Beeman, would you be willing to weigh in on how helpful those cameras may have been to you?
Well, you're correct. We have a lot of success, not just here, but across Indiana. The United States have success stories of using Flock. And you're right, there's no expectation of privacy. When an investigator puts a license plate in there, like they're searching for a stolen vehicle, missing kid, parental kidnapping, anything like that, it's logged in by who put that tag in there as far as looking for a search. So there's a trace on who's doing it. And then once the situation is over, then that comes off, and it's the information is utilized in the court case, and that's it. So there's usually a legal reason to be there, like a suspect in a robbery, cars leaving a bank around a Flock camera on 32. The bank just got robbed. So
would there be anything legally forbidding you to say, let's say that you and I have an argument and we're at odds with each other, and you want to, and I've not done anything illegal, but maybe you want to know what I'm up to and where I'm going. Are there restrictions on you as a law enforcement officer from putting my plate number in there if there's no suspicion of a crime?
Right, that is the agency policy that investigator has to have a reason to enter someone's plate number in there. Now you're getting into policy issues of the departments that's utilizing Flock. That is not an approved use of Flock.
Well, I appreciate the insight earnestly, and your perspective is incredibly valuable. I have concerns because it seems like it's a private company that's archiving and storing this data and then choosing to share it with, I imagine, contractually, potentially with local, state, federal law enforcement. So I'm interested in those contract agreements and also the funding mechanisms that has allowed this to become so saturated so quickly. Is that a taxpayer-funded initiative that's essentially erected this grid in our communities?
Here in Madison County, the one for the sheriff's departments are funded through commissary, so it's not taxpayer funded. The others I can't speak to.
Right. Okay.
Who has access to that data? What agencies have access
Right,
to that?
I wondered about that as well, because it's a private company that could choose, I mean, obviously they've chosen to enter agreements with law enforcement, but what's really preventing this company from sharing this information and these profiles on motorists otherwise? I mean, it's heartening to hear the checks and balances at your
Well, I mean, the state of Indiana, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, you can get an account, you can start running people's license plates for a fee. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things out there. You give up a lot of privacy when you get on the road, when you get a phone contract. You know, there's all kinds of things where, you know, the Amazon account. So it's, you know, it is buyer beware, but these companies, they are contracted. If you remember, if you contract with Flock, like Madison County Sheriff's Department does, then we can get other agencies' data, but you got to regionalize. You can pick it big, nationwide, or small, or depends on what you're looking for. So,
but you have to have a reason to be looking.
Yes, you got to have an investigative reason. I mean, so why you're in there.
But when we're done, if you would see me after we're done, give me your phone number.
Yeah.
We've got some lawyers in the Senate, and they've got some good lawyers on the House side, and we've got former police officers. We've got some resources down there. I think the question would be, what safety guardrails are there on the Flock system? And I think we can put reasonable guardrails out there if they're not there already, and still provide law enforcement what they need as a tool. I'd be happy to look into that and share with you what I find out.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
For accountability, we do have to put a case number, a reason associated with that Flock entry. So let's say there's a red car that just had a skid crash. We have to put the case number with it, plus we have to put what the reasoning is. So it's just not like a blind search.
So
And
how long
it's
do they
associated.
keep, how long is the data held, kept?
I don't know. I mean, probably the police officers would have a better idea than we would as legislators, but
You'll be pleased to know I don't have access to the back end.
Would you all agree that it's a new tool that is helping the police officers track people? What if you got a missing child? And they can go to those and look. Okay, I'm just throwing that out. If it's funny, then I'm sorry, but to me, it's valid a point.
It is. It's a tool, so it can be used.
It could be for good or bad,
Right,
absolutely.
I
Everything
totally
in the
agree with
world's
that.
that way.
It's just evolved very rapidly without a whole lot of public discourse.
Has anybody heard of anybody being arrested because of those?
Yeah.
You have?
There's been officers not here,
Okay,
but in Madison County.
Steve Sumner got caught by open flock.
There's been officers arrested and fired from their job. Lives in Nashville, Tennessee. The officer suspected his wife was cheating on him.
Okay.
So he used the flock system to make her, to track her around. Well, they fired his ass and prosecuted.
It's not, but as a current county commissioner, there's no way county commissioners need to be appointing treasurers and auditors. Serving as an auditor for 8 years, something I enjoy tremendously, but those need to be limited to 8-year term or 2 4-year terms for 8-year terms. So somebody's not in there a lifetime with no oversight. And if you've got someone appointing these people when they're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, I hope that won't go anywhere. It's very important those stay separate, and it's so important, especially in those two offices, the auditor and the treasurer. and how the fund accounting is so separate from the bank accounting, and then those have to balance at audit time and on a daily and monthly basis. So it's so important that those stay separate. So question and a statement.
Thanks for waiting. I agree with you. Yeah, I don't think it would work. And the nice thing, what you're describing is taking the executive branch function and dividing it among several offices. That's the way we have it now. And if you consolidated all that executive power into the commissioner's office, I think the taxpayer loses. And it's nice to hear a commissioner making the argument who would be in the area where that power would be consolidated. So
there was an example of one of our auditors conferences a few years back, and you guys might know about it, but it was actually a town clerk, I believe, in Illinois, who stole millions of dollars over her time and ran a horse farm off of it, and Rita Cromwell. And the only reason she was caught was because it wasn't a new person, but someone happened to open the bank statements while she was on vacation and she got caught. So if forever the same people are running the same office, it's a long time down the road before if you get a bad player. So thank you.
Right.
Hey, going back to John and what Mike said, John, when these new projects come in, I just had a battery farm. They try to say it's a battery farm. It's going to Markletville. It's not a battery farm. It doesn't produce anything. It's a battery storage. It has to happen from local officials to get the ball, or at least get the information out there before it gets to a couple of committees that I sit on, like planning. What I told this group was, first, they don't live here. One lives in Pendleton. He's subcontracting, third party. The other one lives in another state. They're going to make all the money. All the risk we take. You live in that area. You have to live in that environment, the buzzing and all that. What I told this group, because they were asking for a vote, basically, without coming out and asking, what you need to do is go out and talk to everybody in that area and be a good neighbor. You need to set up an open meeting, a public meeting, not told by the public officials. You need to start the ball and get it out there and get in front of them. Then you know if there's an appetite for it. If there is, you move forward and bring it to the county. If there's not, if you're going to ram it down their throats, we live here. Good chance of that happens, not going to happen. So going back to you, John, I think it starts with us. My first year, you have to start with us. If you keep playing ball with them, you're part of the problem, part of the solution. You can be the solution. Just be open and tell them what you need from there. And going back, the only thing I have, I'm disappointed Elizabeth is not here. Yeah. This is her bill. Yeah. I called her. She did call me back. We spoke for an hour and 44 minutes. She told me why it was a good deal. I don't agree with it. Even if I wasn't elected, I don't agree with it. You're talking 92 counties, 5 elected officials, 460 people. Your cost is going to go up and your service is going to go down. You use the argument that she uses, most counties have. Some counties are small, they can't get people. And when they get elected officials, they don't want to run because people in that town will attack them on Facebook and everything else. Well, you know, that's part of the, when you run, you have to be thick-skinned a little bit there and take that. I was hoping more from you two, and I'm not putting this down, but Ethan and Mike, I was hoping you guys would say more. This was a crazy idea. When I heard it, I went to her and said, what are you doing? Because when I heard it, 2 days before it was announced, I called her on the phone. I said, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Not just because my job would be gone. That's fine. I didn't do it for the money. But tell me how you're going to service all the people in this county alone. Now times it by 92. You're going to hurt the taxpayers and the people that elect these elected constitutional offices. Every office was a constitutional office. You're going to hurt them. What was your thinking? Where are you coming from? And you guys, I was hope she'd be here, could explain herself to you guys, because I'd want to know, because she's up for election, what are you thinking? And you guys should be asking those questions from these elected officials. And if you ask that from me, and if I sponsor a bill, I should give you every reason why I think it's a good thing. But what if I sponsored a bill? Before I would sponsor it, you know what I would do? I would go out and sample the waters and make sure it was, hey, does this make sense? I heard that the bill got sponsored. I don't know it to be true. She told me it wasn't, and I'll leave it as that. But I would go and network before I sponsor a bill that can hurt everybody in this state.
I can't speak to another representative's process or another representative's bill. I would let them do that. But the process you're describing is the process I take with the bills that I file. Most of the ideas come from people whose doors I knocked on, or local elected officials who are having trouble navigating the system, or run into a problem that they can't solve. It is incredibly hard to pass a piece of legislation that you think you have a good idea, and that is good for all of us. You'll have probably 1,000, 1,500 bills that get filed. At the end of this session, 150, those maybe 200 will become law. A lot of them die in committee without a hearing, to the point that's been made a couple of times. I don't know what's going to happen with that one yet. I'm not aware that I'm on the committee that bill is in. Maybe I am. It hasn't moved, and I have been focusing my attention on the bills that have been moving, just because the pace is that fast. So just
say I agree, and Ken, I agree with everything you said. And Rick said it's a bad bill. I don't want to disparage the author, but you have so much time in a short session. You've got a very limited amount of time, and what you try to do is focus your attention on number one, trying to kill a bill that you don't think is good for the people and has a decent chance of passing. And number two, trying to get the good bills through. And if there's an idea that has zero chance of passing, you kind of put that to the side and work on the other things. And there's no way that bill's going to pass.
But the feedback like that is really important, and I value it and I seek it. So, and I do even more of that as we get closer to actually voting on a bill. So we had a bill in our committee that dealt with specifically county commissioners. So guess who I was on the phone with, trying to get input from. So that's the same process I'll follow as we have different bills come up. But just like you do at work, you kind of have your next week's worth of things in front of you, and you're kind of reviewing those as you go, and then you got the stuff that's like 2 or 3 weeks out or may not happen. So we're kind of in that process with some of those bills right now.
You guys were talking about the commissioners joining these offices.
I believe that's the bill.
What you're talking about. I'd like to actually live in Township for a while. I'm back in Madison County now. I did some research when I was in Madison County now. There was a letter that we did through some Save the Nickel Plate effort, and this actually went to the mayor of Noblesville and 2 of the commissioners there then. Part of this letter actually states, it says, because the guy didn't agree with them taking out the rails, it says, well, I couldn't agree with you more with removing the rails for the sake of a walking path. I certainly wouldn't put myself, my family, my company, I think it's or another organization that's there in Noblesville, or anything else I stand for in jeopardy by actually complaining about the Save the Nickel Plate, And as a matter of fact, I supported you. That's fear coming from somebody that's saying, I would not risk everything that I care about and countering you. So that's a letter from, and I think that's very, very concerning how much power the county commissioners already have. So it came from a FOIA request, and it's still actually online somewhere. So, any thoughts on that?
That sounds like an argument for not putting more power in the hands of the county commissioners, I would say.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, there was another lady who was doing a talk show, and she's actually been standing up for some things, and I think we'll maybe kind of want to bring this up more. She actually said, I'm not suicidal. But she's getting kind of comments to her because she's bringing up things. So there's too much power somewhere when you want to stand up for things and stand up for what's right already here. So that needs to be curbed or somehow helped. I'm not sure what level, but it needs somebody's attention.
Well, I'm glad that none of you feel afraid to express anything that you're thinking to us, and I'm glad that you have, and I hope that you continue to. Like, this is the best part of this job. You cannot claim to represent people if you don't get out into communities or sit here and take questions. I don't know the answers to all of them, but this is the job, and it's an honor to do it. Yes?
If I may, I read once, someone said, government is a product of humanity, and humanity is predisposed to accept suffering. In other words, hunker down and endure, make it through it. And when government is the source of your suffering, it is not only your right, but it is your duty to change it.
You have people afraid to speak up.
And that's not my thoughts. A much greater person than me wrote that. That's Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. And then in more modern era, a very bright lady told me, working as a government employee, you expect that there's some policing that goes on within its own monstrosity. And she reminded me that they are in a very compromised position. It's the citizens' responsibility to police the government, not the employee or the bureaucrat in the government. So that really means you have to get creative, and you have to step up, and you have to put your time in it.
We kind of get in trouble when we get creative. I get in trouble when I get creative.
Oh yes, you certainly have to get thick skin.
I don't have one more thing. If you actually do any FOIA requests, ask for a blind carbon copy as well. So some of the results that I found actually were going into the decision. Blind carbon copy name, it will show up in another way. So they may be hiding communications through that source. So ask for that if you do any requests.
Okay. We're going to go around real quick. If somebody's got a statement within 30 seconds, please give it to us. And then, because we'd like to adjourn, I've got a gentleman out here that I need for Dan. Now that you stood up, Dan, now that you stood up, I'd like for you to give us what happened last night, what's going to happen next week in Madison.
Well, thank you very much. My wife and I just celebrated our 35th anniversary in June, and so we decided that's not too special for you that are having a 50. But anyway, we decided that we better go and do a sentimental journey. We got a videographer to go with us and recorded that whole thing. And so last night in Anderson, we had our world premiere of that, and then we're going to have our world premiere in Muncie Sunday night, 6 o'clock, First Church of the Brethren on Morrison Road. That's the one that goes between Yalliard Walmart and River Road. And so you're all welcome to come. We'll give you some anniversary cake.
That's kind of a general question that I don't know how it works with the issues we had on that. Is any of that under your guys' purview to find out where that's at, why we haven't seen anything come
Where
from
the investigation is.
Right. Is there any item from the committee that would?
It's going to be mostly under executive branch authority. If the state police are involved, and if local police are involved, county sheriff or mayor. But what I have heard is that whoever did this was very careful to. It was probably somebody with some computer skills to layer themselves and make themselves anonymous, basically, when they did. That's what I heard, but I haven't heard anything for a while.
Okay, I just didn't know if that fell under, if you guys had, like you see a lot of committee hearings and things at the federal level, I just think we could do that at the state level.
That's all state police and executive.
Yeah. I'm willing, Mike, to stick around and just mill around with people. I made some commitments
That's
that I
not
want
a
to
problem,
keep.
but I would ask for everybody to try to move as far away, because we've got to clean this room up before we do. So other than that, if you're adjourned, I appreciate it. If you have questions, I'm sure it'll be glad to stay there.
My way, I just gotta let it go. That's why when I hear them telling they lies, just gotta let them know. Please do not judge me, just pray for me. Looking back on my life, God, then